We are returning to our 1:30 continuation of our policy session on this March 23rd, 2021. The Clackamas County Board of Commissioners. Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. All commissioners are present this afternoon. Your first session is from Business and Community Services, County Parks Fine for public urination and defecation and code policy discussion. We have Tom Riggs and Sarah Ekman from Business and Community Services to present. I assume they're online. They're coming in the room now. You did have a session on this before, and you asked for some more information and a little more analysis, which staff has done, and now they're bringing it back to you. So Sarah or Tom, please go ahead.
Great, thank you. I think you covered most of it, but I wanted to
Sorry.
introduce Tom. You'd be good. So we're here for this reason today. Tom has a full presentation to walk you through. There was an interest in talking a bit more, especially around the use of restrooms and restroom availability within county parks and how that relates to code violations for public urination and defecation. So I'll turn it over to Tom and you can walk us through that. And then there's also some administrative changes to the county code that relate to parks.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Well, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt, and staff, thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. Per your request, I'm returning to the issue of public urination and defecation in parks to provide some background and context and have some further discussion on your questions. And I'm going to go ahead and share screen if I am enabled to do that. Excellent. So I wanted to quickly provide an overview of the code and its intended purpose, the fine history and options, the availability of restroom facilities in our county parks, bring everyone up to speed, and then we can discuss your concerns. Then we also have some additional code changes that were submitted for your consideration, which I can provide a quick summary on as well. So to the first issue at hand, County Code 606-050L4, no person shall urinate or defecate in public in any park area, which was approved by the board in 2019. This rule was initially proposed following the court ruling in State versus Corselius 2018, which removed offensive littering as an enforcement mechanism for public urination or defecation. So then last month at issues session, we requested the board assign a $115 fine for violations of that section, having been told a fine amount was never assigned and knowing it had been overlooked in the updating and adoption of fines in 2020. But the board had questions regarding how the rule would be applied and enforced, especially in light of the parks that don't have restroom facilities, and asked staff to come back to this policy session with more information. So as it turns out, in preparing for the policy session, staff discovered that the June 2019 ordinance enacting 050L4 actually already listed a fine of $150. But then further digging revealed that the current posted County Code Appendix B fines lists a $115 fine, which is consistent with the staff recommendation, but I'm not honestly sure how we got there. Nevertheless, knowing that that's what's published, we're requesting a clarification and affirmation of the $115 fine amount, but that of course still leaves the commissioner's questions about why we have this rule and how it be enforced. So to provide a little context, I did some research on some other jurisdictions, and as you can see, Oregon and Washington state parks, as well as Portland, Gresham, Oregon City, all have similar ordinances on the books. I also reached out to some colleagues in Douglas, Jackson, and Washington counties. They indicated they don't have specific ordinances related to human waste, but have ordinances related to littering, which may no longer be applicable depending on how they're phrased following the Corselius case. It's been noted that the city of Gresham $1,000 fine is pretty steep, and some view it as a specifically anti-homeless punitive measure. Given the state of our current homelessness crisis, I can see how that would be a concern. I will say those citizens are not who we had in mind when submitting this rule. We were thinking more about the crowds of people playing in the parks or coming off the river that may be making an intentional and either lazy or malicious choice not to utilize one of the restrooms or porta potties we provide for them. But even when it comes to enforcement of the code with those people, our county parks enforcement philosophy emphasizes education and compliance over punishment. Our goal is to protect public health and promote public enjoyment of the parks, and we issue citations to correct visitor behavior when education hasn't worked. Knowing all that context, the main concern from the commissioners, as I understand it, is how this rule could be applied in parks that don't provide restroom facilities. So County Parks currently manages 20 properties. In the 12 listed in the green box have restroom facilities available year-round. The 3 in the yellow have porta potties seasonally May through September. We have 1 open park that has no restroom facilities and 4 properties that are not developed as parks and not open to the public currently. So looking at those middle 2 boxes, Feldheimer, Knightsbridge, and Wagon Wheel are river access sites with very seasonal use patterns. They get some visitors in the off-season and usually for shorter stays or passing through to get out on the river, whereas in the summer, they are destinations for wading and swimming, and visitors may spend the whole day there. So we provide porta potties during peak use season to accommodate that influx of visitors. Ed Latourette County Park is the one park that is open to the public but has no restroom facilities any time of year. It's on the Sandy River, but it is mostly undeveloped and sees little public use, as it is only a quarter mile from Dodge Park, which has developed facilities and a much better river access and a better beach. So we've not expanded the locations or seasons of our porta potties, as providing them year-round at underutilized facilities is cost prohibitive. Also, much like a neighborhood park or vacant lot that people use for recreation, we presume a short stay visitor could simply head home or to some other facility to use a restroom. And as the seasonal use patterns also help to inform our workload, the fact is we're not doing a lot of patrol in these parks that time of year to be doing enforcement on these because our work is needed elsewhere. We tend to focus our patrol efforts when there are more users there. So that is kind of the background and current status of our county parks property portfolio. And Chair Smith, would you like to open this topic to discussion at this point, or shall I finish the presentation with the other code changes now and have all the discussion take place afterwards?
Why don't you go ahead and we'll have all discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, yes. So regarding the remaining code changes, there are 3 other code changes that have been approved by our Parks Advisory Board and recommended by them for adoption by the BCC. The first one is a housekeeping change clarifying terminology. The second is a simple formatting issue, and the third is a new section of code that clarifies the process for exclusions and redirects the appeals process to the county administrator. So currently, county code defines the definitions section references a parks director, but we don't actually have a parks director per se. We have a director of BCS and we have a manager of parks. So we're changing parks director to parks manager in the code to distinguish between the two. In addition to the definitions section, there are 13 other references to parks director throughout the code, and we're changing all of those to be consistent with the definitions section. However, I will note that there are 3 existing references that specifically list Director of Business and Community Services. And those 3 references all make reference to granting enforcement authority to employees, agents, or peace officers. And we are not changing that. That authority is residing still with the Director of Business and Community Services. It is the references to Parks Director that are being changed to Parks Manager. Let's see, in 030 subsection D, there has been this odd formatting issue with this paragraph break partway through. And we were looking at some other changes there and it just stood out at us. So we have reformatted that to take the 3 main points that exist in this section and create them as bullet lists, moving the bottom paragraph up to the middle bullet and adding a heading section of fees required. And then the final change is the inclusion of a new section 606090, which spells out our county parks exclusion process, about which 606 was previously fairly silent. It said we could do them, but didn't really say how. This language, which was approved by the Code Committee, is essentially the current practice on park exclusions that's been utilized for years, except that the new language changes the appeal process. Previously, appeals of exclusions were sent to the parks manager, who made a ruling on the exclusion. This produced a process whereby Parks was making the decision whether Parks properly excluded someone from our parks, and that didn't seem properly objective. So after discussion with the county administrator, it was agreed that having appeals go to the administrator's office created a better process with more accountability. So thank you for your consideration of these code changes. And at this point, we can open it to discussion.
Have all of the code changes been addressed? Seems to me we had one specific one. Was that addressed, staff? Commissioners? Regarding if there were not facilities available, would the fine still be imposed? Wasn't that issue raised at the last time we were here?
There was an issue with the restrooms, and I can't remember what it was. Sarah, do you remember, or Tom?
Yes, that was the question, was how many of our parks don't have restrooms and what would happen in those parks that don't have restrooms. And so that's why I brought back the list of those parks that seasonally and or don't have restrooms. There has not been a specific change made to that regard. It was we're bringing back information for you for discussion as to how you'd like to resolve that.
Well, does the park fine would still be issued if these activities occurred in a park that had no restrooms? I think that was the question, correct? And I guess that's up to the board. I seem to remember that possibly that we maybe thought that was unfair. Yeah, and I see a light on. Is that Paul?
It is.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I had my hand up prior to this exact topic, but my hand was up to ask Tom the question early on in your presentation, and I read it as well in the packet last night, that the $150, 150, is embedded somewhere, and then you have the $115 So does the 150 need to be corrected?
That would be my understand. Well, the current publicly posted county code available on the county website with the Appendix B fines lists 115. So and that is the number that staff supports, and if that's the number that the commissioners are good with, then we just need affirmation that the published fee schedule is correct, and we're good. The original ordinance dated from June of 2019 said the 050L4 was enacted and assigned a fine amount of $150. We didn't realize that before the prep work for today, and so I'm not sure. I have not seen that on a fee schedule anywhere. It's on the original ordinance paperwork, so I'm not sure what the internal process is for reconciling those two.
So it embedded in the ordinance. I thought we made I'm not sure if it was county parks or elsewhere, but I thought we made an effort to separate the fees and the fines from the ordinance in particular. Maybe I'm wrong, but we have two conflicting pieces of information, it sounds like, and one of them needs to be corrected. So all I'm asking is, how do we get there?
And I don't have that answer.
Yeah, I guess I was just gonna say, we would work that out certainly if the board affirms the 115, and we want you to know that was the recommendation of staff too, then we can work with council to ensure that the reference in the ordinance is updated accordingly.
Yeah, it seems to me if we're gonna straighten all this out, now's the time. I don't want to come back and have to do this again for this one little detail. So I want to But I don't see that incorporated in the recommendation.
That's a great point. And if, if that's the will of the board, we could certainly, if that's something you can include today in your guidance, then we can take that forward with the recommendation in addition to, fixing the $150 reference to align with the approved fee of $115. We can make that happen.
Gary, you
Okay.
have a comment?
Yes, you commissioners, you just confirm the fee you're approving today, and we'll clean it up for you. You don't have to come back for another session. You just give us your direction today.
And regarding the issue I raised as well?
Yes, and then, well, in the restrooms, I would say for the board to make a decision now. So in the case where there is a county park with no restroom facilities, do you want to waive this fee in those scenarios? And if so, we'll make it part of the language here.
Okay.
It's awkward, though. I mean, basically, are you going to allow someone to publicly urinate because we don't offer a restroom? I mean,
I think
That
it's
makes
an
sense,
issue
but-
that needs to be addressed. I'd like county council to weigh in on this.
It certainly seems like that would be a fair thing to do. I'm not sure there's a legal analysis that I'm applying, just as a matter of fairness, though. My 2 cents, it seems equitable and fair to, but what is
Is
the
your
question?
microphone on? I think they're yelling at you, they can't hear
We
you.
see some hands waving in the,
Yeah, there's hands waving in the, yeah.
does the light go on when you touch it? It's automatically set then, so.
You might just have to get a little closer to it.
Yeah, there you go.
Hello?
Yeah, that
I think you're okay,
Yeah,
yeah, you're
thumbs up.
okay. You're okay now.
All right. I'll try and go back. I'm not aware of a legal issue that's arising from, but Mr. Seco, if you'd like to hear from him, he is
Yeah,
here.
Scott, you have a comment on this?
Sure, thank you, Chair. My suggestion might be if the direction to staff is simply not to enforce this particular ordinance in the park, that could be essentially a policy decision or a direction to staff. There's always discretion with enforcement of ordinances, so instead of trying to create special legislation just for these locations, that could just be a directive to staff, and that could be carried out through policy.
I think is probably a wise way to do it. Discretion to staff if, for instance, it's a continued repeat offender. I mean, right? Or if it's just a once situation. I'm trying to be discreet here. So let's kick that can over to staff. I think they understand what our,
Yes, so if you approve the code change, if you do that, and then staff can make a policy of what they choose to enforce, especially the parks that do not have a restroom, and can offer more latitude in those instances.
so the recommendation in the report is to affirm, recommend option 1. Have all of our commissioners read that, option 1? If so, I'll entertain a motion.
hey, Chair Smith, I
Yes.
had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry,
It's
go
okay.
ahead, Sonia.
So I just wanted to ask council a question. So these code ordinance lasts quite a while. So my concern is if we don't put it in code, then as staff change, as commissions change, it's just the hard language of the code, that's what the fee is.
Sure, for a citation, that would be, once a citation is issued, the fine would be $115, assuming that's what's affirmed.
So can you footnote in the code or do anything that says when there are restroom facilities are not available, staff is instructed to not enforce this? Because future staff or future commissions, they're going to go straight to the code.
Sure, I guess you certainly could, if that's the board's direction, we certainly could legislate that to be clear that in facilities where there isn't a restroom, this ordinance doesn't apply. Again, however, that being then permanent, and if you had a situation where, for example, people were repeatedly camping and defecating in the woods, and that was something that we did want to try to enforce, then we wouldn't have the ability. So it's really, it's just the board's preference which way you want to go with it. But whether you leave some discretion to the staff, the park staff in enforcing this, or whether you legislate it for it specifically in the code.
Would we ever have a camping situation where there weren't restroom facilities
No.
that were our county campgrounds?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was
Not a
thinking.
legal camping facility.
What was that, Tom?
Not a legal camping area. Any legal camping would be accompanied by a restroom facility, with the exception of where we have a self-contained RV situation.
Yeah. I'm just trying to look at it as, and you know, I just bring that lens. If you read the language, that's what it says, that's what you do. So that would just be my 2 cents. If there's a way to clarify it. And I think the only reason why this comes to mind is that we just went through everything shutting down, including all restroom facilities. And if you were going to go on a hike or go outside, if you were going for a longer period of time, there was, what were you gonna do? You know, so, yeah.
I think staff and the enforcers need discretion in using this, in using the non-availability of restrooms, because I can foresee many, many situations arising that, where you would need to use some discretion in implementing these fines. If we have a county park that's open and no restrooms facilities, that's on us. Seriously, people. So I'm just saying this to the Parks Department. So I do not want to be punitive in that, no, I do not like public urination and defecation at all. Don't think I'm going down that road. But we also have park facilities that don't have restrooms, and they should. But I'm not going down that road today. So I think with that in mind, we have to give leeway to our enforcers to establish the rules as they can evaluate based on the circumstances at the time of which this board cannot contemplate at the moment. So with that in mind, I'll take a recommendation. I'll take a motion to affirm option 1.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Commissioner Scholl to recommend option 1, and it's been seconded by Commissioner Schrader. Any further comments?
Commissioner
Sure,
Savas
yeah.
has his hand up.
I've had my hand up a little bit. I
That's
just want to
nice.
just be a little bit from a practical standpoint, being at Barton Park and being at Carver Park at the busiest times. I have seen situations where the restroom facilities are in high demand and there's lines out, and so I do know that, from a humane standpoint, that there are times where if there's a line of 20 people and there's not adequate number of facilities, that could really be a difficult situation for someone. I wouldn't want to see someone fined for something that they don't have any control over. So,
And I am
I'm
sympathetic,
just
yeah.
hoping and assuming that there's discretion in there, and that we always strive, or there's language in here that strives to make sure that not only, because I think just having restroom facilities may not be adequate. There probably needs to be adequate facilities available.
Yeah.
But I'm not here to change the language. I just want to raise this issue so that staff is aware that that at times maybe we don't have enough facilities on site for the busiest times.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I really like what Paul just said, and I'm just looking to Scott to say, could a simple amendment be put in there that when there are adequate facilities?
Again, yes,
Would that be
this can
something?
amended to the board's pleasing. There's not limitations there. It's simply a policy question of whether you want to leave discretion to park staff to decide when it's appropriate to issue a citation, or whether this board wants to legislate that in the ordinance.
I mean, it seems that saying adequate facilities makes it broad enough. Yeah. And also, of course, there's going to always be discretion. We're not forcing you to enforce any code.
I will just say one initial thought about the term adequate is it's a little bit like that term reasonable, which gets a little bit fuzzy, and there could potentially be issues with, going before a hearings officer enforcing some of these citations, which could make it slightly more complicated if somebody was raising the defense, for example, that, well, there was a bathroom there, but it was dirty and therefore I didn't find it adequate, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's just something I think to think about when you're
Well,
putting language there, but we can
I
look into
think
that.
the term adequate is a slippery slope. I think we should give discretion to the people who do, really, discretion. Now, you're going to find that in any police organization, whether it's the sheriff's office, whether it's the state police, whether it's our city, they always have discretion when they go out on a call to either arrest or not arrest based on what they see. We don't have their eyes. We don't walk in their shoes. So by amending it to say adequate, we're going to have to define adequate forever and ever. I kind of like the motion with discretion being given to the staff to do what they need to do. Also, I would just try to find it incumbent upon our parks, these list of parks that don't have, there's 3 of them, Feldheimer, Knightsbridge, Wagon Wheel, Letterette Park. They say, that's not that busy because there's Dodge Park next to it. So I don't know, just maybe if the Parks Department can figure out how to weigh during the busy time of the year to put porta potties, maybe you can get a grant. Maybe that's a better way to approach the lack of facilities and just leave it to the discretion of the people. I think we've already done a lot with this particular piece of legislation. I mean, we've never had it before, right? And I think we're coming a long ways just establishing it as it is. I see a light on.
Tom Riggs has his hand up.
Tom?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer one of the thoughts that BCS staff had in conversation about this was whether to add just to the end of section L4, when restroom facilities are provided. But one of the concerns that came up with that is the precedence that could set for NCPRD or some of our other city parks departments that have neighborhood parks that do not have restroom facilities. The presumption that the park would not draw people for long enough stays to need that. So if we were to amend the language of 050L4 to include when restroom facilities are provided as, an out for any violations, then there is that concern. And yeah, I'll just reiterate that current county patrol procedures do in fact emphasize education and provide discretion to the officers, that we're not looking to do this punitively. We're looking to have this as a management tool for those people that are choosing to act badly on purpose.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point on that, Tom. You do. Any more discussion on the motion?
I don't see any.
Christina, let's call for the poll.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher?
No.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
And Chair Smith?
Aye, passes 4-1. Thank you very much, staff, for coming in today. Up next, Gary.
Next, we also have Business and Community Services for Eagle, Fern, Weir Dam removal. Tom and Sarah are the presenters as well. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So Tom's going to walk you through this one as well. We have an opportunity to work with some partners to remove a weir at Eagle Fern Park. And there are some changes this would make to the park, so he's going to walk through that. And the total investment from the county is a very low amount, under $1,000, but he'll walk through the whole project and give you an overview.
All right, yes, thank you. And thank you again for the opportunity to come before the board. And this time we have a project proposal and request related to Eagle Fern County Park. Also with us today, hopefully, is Dave Stewart from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. So I don't know if he's in the waiting room, but he'll be here to help with the Q&A at the end of this. So Eagle Fern is a popular 171-acre day-use county park near Estacada, which features picnic areas, hiking trails, old growth trees, and just under a mile of frontage on Eagle Creek. The Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, or ODFW for short, working with several partner organizations, approached county parks to propose removing an old concrete weir or dam at Fern and stabilize the bank with large wood and riparian plantings where applicable. The existing concrete structure spans Eagle Creek inside the park near Picnic Area 1. The goal is to remove the structure to restore fish passage and natural channel processes and reduce stream bank erosion following removal. Improved fish habitat and stream function should benefit recreational fishing opportunities both at the park and upstream from it. So the weir was originally constructed as a recreational swimming hole feature at the park sometime in the mid-20th century. Park staff checked with the Oregon Water Resources Department to verify that the weir does not serve any water rights. It doesn't. And looking at this picture, you may note the higher concrete walls on the sides than in the middle. It was originally designed to have planks inserted between the concrete uprights to create a deeper pool. But park staff informs me we haven't used planks to adjust to the water depth since probably the 1970s. But currently there is a popular beach just upstream from the weir, and park staff was concerned about what the removal of this weir would mean for recreation at the site. However, park staff also recognizes that this concrete structure is aging, parts of it have broken or cracked, and the water has been undercutting the spillway ramp in the middle of the weir, leading to possible future safety concerns which the county would have to deal with. And the weir is definitely subject to the forces of nature. When the creek flow is high, the water overtops the sidewalls of the weir, which creates a fair amount of turbulence in the water and spills over the edges of the sidewalls, leading to point-specific erosion issues. County parks have made ODFW aware of our concerns about the recreational impacts, such as the loss of swimming opportunities and maintaining the beach area, and also potential risks to the footbridge abutments downstream from the weir. And I'm pleased to report that ODFW was receptive to those concerns and is addressing public recreational use in their design and planning, including strategic placement of boulders to direct stream velocity away from bridge abutments and placement of woody debris in such a way as to help retain the beach at the park. This won't change the fact that without the weir, the water in front of the beach won't be quite as deep, but when the project team was out mapping the stream bed, they found some low areas that they couldn't enter with their chest waders because it was too deep. So they believe there'll still be some good opportunities for getting wet in the creek on a hot day. Given the fact that this project not only removes a potential future liability at almost no cost to the county, but also improves fish habitat and restores natural stream function, BCS and county parks wanted to bring this project before you to see if you would be supportive, and if so, offer support as landowner to ODFW and their partner organizations. When ODFW first approached us, we let them know that county parks resources were already stretched thin and we didn't have the bandwidth to take on overall project management and coordination. So ODFW offered to take the lead. They are partnering with American Rivers, the Resources Legacy Fund, Oregon Wildlife Foundation, OWEB, and Trout Unlimited, as well as consultants, local residents, PGE, and the Watershed Council to bring this project together and move it forward with a variety of funding sources. As the landowner, support for the project from Clackamas County is critical to ODFW and partner organizations being able to seek grant support for funding of the project. The total proposed project cost is approximately $129,000, and ODFW is only asking the county to contribute $960 to obtain a floodplain development permit. The rest of the project costs would be covered by partners and grants. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Dave Stewart with ODFW for some additional information on the project proposal and request.
Thanks, Tom. Do you hear me okay out there?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in a couple. I think Tom's right on everything he covered there. I also wanted to just highlight the fact that Eagle Creek subbasin is one of our highest priorities in the Clackamas Basin. for restoration and recovery of salmonids. And this is all documented in the Lower Columbia Conservation Recovery Plan. So it's all highlighted there. And on top of that, Eagle Creek, really the work that we're doing, this project will build upon other work we've done for restoration and help us to get more restoration and improvements to fish habitat in the longer term. We have a number of different projects that are upcoming that we will use, that we will build upon for this. So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to review this project and want to let you know that it is one of our highest priorities.
I noticed the footbridge that goes across Eagle Creek, I assume, that will remain. Is that right, Dave?
Yes.
As Tom said, you're going to take mitigation efforts to deal with the stream flow. So that is still operational, correct?
Yes, we have Waterways Consulting is, we're planning, they're well aware of the bridge structure, and that's all incorporated into the design.
Okay, I see a light on.
Commissioner Savas has his hand raised.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, question. I don't have any quarrel per se with this project, and anything to meet a lot of the requirements and issues when it comes to fish passage and environmental stuff is, stream restoration, all those kinds of things are always good. Don't have a problem with that. But my question is more along the lines of that. This has been there for a long time. There's probably at least a couple generations of usage of that, and one day they're going to show up and realize there's no pool. So what have you done for public outreach in preparation for that? Because I think that's just a fundamental thing we in Clackamas County engage in, and making sure that in advance of something like this, that they're aware, the public's been made aware. Have there been any postings a year ago during the swimming hot weather days that this was going to take place?
Tom, did you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we talked to the county parks, a while back. Part of this is we didn't know exactly when we would be implementing it, and now that we have funding, we're looking good that we will be able to get this going later this fall. So we're waiting until after Labor Day. And there is still plans. I'm not sure exactly. That was going to be in negotiation with the Parks Department to find out how exactly we're going to do it. We're planning on some sort of a kiosk or notification, some sort of a structure there to, letting people know what's going on, the benefits of the project, and why we're doing what we're doing. We did also talk about potentially leading up to it, putting some information in the local paper, getting the word out. And Dave Bugney, who's a great landowner that we've worked with on other projects, Eagle Creek, noted that he'd be able to help us with that. So at this point, I don't think we've actually implemented any of the outreach, or at least any of the details yet. But we're looking at doing this in September. So I think there's still time to really do a lot of that. But I'm not sure, Tom, I'm not sure. And I don't think we have any other county folks on that can talk about whether we've done anything else there.
Yeah, we haven't done a public outreach yet because we wanted to bring this to the board and see if this project was supported before we started telling people this project was happening.
Well, I think you would have plenty of time by the low water mark this fall to do the public outreach. And then if there was concerns, I suppose they could be addressed at that time. You said one of the adjacent landowners was willing to help you with that. Obviously, that landowner supports the project. How many other landowners are adjacent to this property? Very many?
There aren't very many. There's 3, and let's see, I guess I don't have the document in front of me, but I believe PGE, let's see, Tom, do you know, I can pull up the document if we need to. PGE is one of the big ones. We also have the Soil and Water Conservation District has purchased a large parcel in the area as well. But
Yeah,
they are, everybody's supportive.
Oh,
The
okay.
Eagle Fern Community Forest is much of the land surrounding it, which is that partnership between PGE, Soil and Water Conservation, and county parks of having, I think we have 1,400 acres combined, all adjacent to each other in that area.
Martha?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I know Dave Bugney very well. He was one of the folks that has really helped spearhead Journey Down the Clackamas.
Oh.
He is well-known in the area, and I would feel really confident if he's on board with this, that the word will get out.
Good.
So, yeah, he's a pretty good guy.
Well, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
Christina, there's a light on?
Commissioner Sava has his hand
Commissioner
raised.
Savas.
Yeah, just trying to complete my thoughts here. Thanks for the response. So it sounds like it's more notification than it really is outreach. I think there's a distinction between the two. You know, one's outreach, find out what people think, versus notification is, hey, buddy, we already decided we're going to do this. So I'm not being brash. I'm not trying to be. I just, coming on the heels of last summer during COVID, there were a few county parks in the area where they didn't have access on hot days. Canby in particular comes to mind, and a significant amount of pushback came from the people that traditionally would visit that site on hot days who lived in the community. And so this might be an unwelcome surprise to get the notification. Sounds like, again, you're going to do it in fall after the summer heat, but I would certainly want to be aware and let someone chime in as to, if they had concerns about that. So the other concern I have, really, again, if we take the shallow part away for children, and your picture displayed children, so I have, I love kids, and paramount as a parent, you're always concerned about the safety of children. So knowing that there's a very predictable shallow area for children to wade in versus a deep hole, how deep is that hole? And if that's the only place for them to, get knee high in water, then I guess my concern is that might be another impediment for children to actually enjoy it safely.
Yeah, I think, in some of these questions, if we needed to go deeper, we can, have follow-up from John Dvorsky at Waterways Consulting. But they talked about this, and there's an email chain that he feels that from their review, and they did a complete survey of the area, that the water depths in there are going to be potentially, a little bit lower, but there's still going to be plenty of water for people to, access and then swim, or, and get wet essentially in the stream. There's a bedrock layer under this whole section. So they don't feel like, and within that, there's areas where they have these indentions, and that's what they've surveyed. So again, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but basically there will still be access for, getting wet and kind of, I guess half swimming. But what was your other part of that as far as, so you're worried about safety?
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's not a safe place for small kids, especially to wade in, and if only place to get that is this deep indentation that you're talking
right.
about. How deep is
gotcha.
that? Is that a drowning hazard? If they're
No.
pushing all those people into one part of the river?
No. Yeah, it won't be that at all. I mean, essentially what we're doing, one of the concerns is the beach. And that's why we're putting this structure in to secure part of that beach so people have good access to the beach. So that's not going to change. And really, the deep sections aren't going to change that much at all. They might get a little shallow, a little bit shallower. So I don't think there's going to be any safety. I mean, it's going to be a safer area because we're removing the structure that's failing ultimately. So I think it's a benefit for the safety.
All right, I just want to remind everyone, the parks are for people for the most part, and that's who we're serving. And there again, we have to be environmentally responsible, and I understand all of the watershed stewardship that we're doing. That's also appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just note that Tom brought this up early on about the fact that the park, obviously it's important to allow people access. So that's been on our radar the whole time. And as far as the timing of this project, we definitely have funding secure. Things are rolling along for this fall. Just for your information, if there is a holdup on getting the landowner's signature, definitely let me know ahead of time, because that could affect us implementing this year, which could affect us getting the funding. There's restrictions on timing there. So just so everybody realizes, I want to do whatever I can to answer questions, and I'll do that as far as public outreach as well. We'll do whatever we have to do. But just so you realize, we do have a little bit of a timeline here. We're hoping to submit applications within the next couple of weeks and really get this next step of the project moving.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to accept a motion that we pass option 1, issue a landowner letter of support for the project.
So moved?
And second?
Seconded.
Commissioner Fisher has made the motion, and Commissioner Scholl has seconded that. Any discussion from commissioners? Christina, would you call the poll?
Of course. Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
And Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. And thank you very much, staff, for your presentation today. It was quite enlightening. Gary?
That is it for today, Chair Smith.
Wonderful. Good work, commissioners. And we'll see you again. This meeting is adjourned.